This episode of the Mega Meeple is brought to you by our supporters over at Pod Pledge. Welcome back to the Mega Meeple, this show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. This is episode 40, and we are 10 episodes away from our 1 year anniversary. Yes, episode 50 will fall on the same weekend as our 1 year anniversary as a podcast and as a website. What kind of fun things do you want to hear and see on the website, or specifically here on the podcast, specifically episode 50? So sound off. Let us know. Talk to us on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and all those links to those things can be found on our website, www.themegameeple.com. So yeah, wow. Yeah, I remember back... when I first started, it was like, hey, I hear these other podcasters and say, I never thought we'd get to episode, whatever number. And even with YouTube, you see these people saying, I never thought I'd get up to, whatever number of subscribers. But, I said way back from episode 1, I have full intention to reach episode 50. And it looks like I'm going to make good on it. So that's exciting, and the fact that 50 is a big number, and it's also the same weekend that we'll be celebrating our 1 year anniversary. So that's doubly exciting. So 2 milestones all in the same weekend. Looking forward to that. So yeah, but just let us know what kind of party should we throw here? What kind of games should we talk about? What should we do, like a look back on the past year, or do you want to hear a bunch of blooper reels or whatever? We could throw something like that together. But something really cool and special for that episode and that weekend for our 1 year and our 50th. So looking forward to that. But thank you to all of you who have been with us from the very beginning, and for those of you who have kind of caught the wave over the past year, however, whatever episode you came in on. I'm sure if you go back and listen to the archives, I wasn't, I'm not too smooth now, but I was even less smooth back then. But I think over the past year, we've hit our stride. We found our signature, our style of podcast, because they're every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there is having a gaming podcast. And as I said from the very beginning, this is an evolving thing. It's always changing. We're gonna get better. We're gonna try a few new things and get rid of things that don't work, or tweak things that could be done better. And we just this past year has just been a constant tweaking and improving and getting better. So I think if you go back and listen to the first episode and then listen to this episode, you'll hear the improvements. Well, what has been going on at the Mega Meeple studio? Let me tell you, this past week has been just slammed through the wall busy. and it's a good thing, because we got some really, really cool guests coming up in the next few weeks. I had 2 interviews this past Tuesday. I had one interview Wednesday night and 2 interviews this past Friday. And I still have 3 interviews scheduled for next week. One for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so, yeah, I like it when I have the next maybe like 2 months worth of, at least 2 months worth of half episodes already in the can and, recorded with the guest spots. I just got to try to finagle and figure out scheduling as far as what episode is going to have which guest, because some guests they have a Kickstarter that's starting pretty soon. Some guests have a Kickstarter that is just finishing, and I'm trying to get those guest episodes out before their Kickstarter ends. And then there's about 2 or so that the Kickstarter has long been over, and their game is starting to get shipped out to the backers, and we're having them come on and talk about that. And speaking of guests, next weekend, let's see, looking at the weekend of March 3rd and 4th, we're going to have a little extra treat for you. We are actually, in addition to episode 41, we're also going to release another episode. So you have 2 episodes next weekend. So 41 and 42 will be coming out next weekend. 41 will be our regular style podcast. I'll rant a little bit, talk about what's going on, and then hopefully if we get Al back in the studio, you'll hear me and Al banter back and forth, and we'll have a guest. But I always like to try to focus and showcase one guest per episode. That way, when they're sharing with their social media outlets and advertising and getting the word out for their game, they're not having to compete with an episode that has another guest on it. I'd like to try to keep each episode one guest per episode type of thing. And that goes back to what I was saying a few seconds ago about figuring out what guests are going to be on which episode in timing with their Kickstarter or the release of their new game or the shipping of their new game or just announcing a new game that is coming to Kickstarter soon. So, but one of our guests that I interviewed this past week, typically when you hear the guest of the episode, it's the interview is really no more than like 20 minutes or so. But there was one guest that I spoke to this past week. It was one of the many interviews I had this past week. And we just talked about a whole slew of stuff. We talked about history. We talked about video games. We talked about their new game that's finishing up here on Kickstarter. But we wound up just talking for well over an hour. So rather than, again, not wanting to have guests compete with, for attention and listenership of people listening to the episode, and also keeping a lot of these episodes in a manageable length of time. I mean, if I would put 2 guests together on one episode, next weekend's episode would be like 2.5, 3 hours long. I mean, I no, I'll leave that stuff to like the Secret Cabal. They like to have like 2 or 3 hour long podcast episodes. No, I can't. I'm not going to expect my listeners to sit through all that. But so next weekend we will have a separate episode just for the one guest. So next weekend, in addition to our regular episode, we will be putting out another episode, be episode 42, and it will just be the episode of my interview with Academy Games. I spoke to Uwe and Gunther Eichert, two fantastic guys, and I think you'll be really, really interested in hearing about just the background and history of Academy Games and how their new board game, Agents of Mayhem, Pride of Babylon, came to be, and how they got that IP, and just what that whole game entails, just the mechanics, the aesthetics of it, and some of the cool add-ons and so forth that they have on their Kickstarter. So I wanted to at least get that episode out. So what have I been playing? Let's see. We got a few more plays in from of Rising Sun, and that Kickstarter that was delivered to me not too long ago. I also just recently received Blue Shift, and that got to play that through at least once. So I'm gonna play through that a few more times. I will be putting out a written review on the website for Blue Shift, because I think that you'll find that game to be pretty interesting. We had Ben, the designer of that, interviewed last year. Yeah, in fact, I interviewed Ben Stenquist of Nebulous Games back on episode 7. Let's see, when was that? Episode 7 was released on June 17th of last year. And at that time, Blue Shift was still on Kickstarter, and I interviewed him then with that. So now we just received a Blue Shift Kickstarter copy and played through it. It was pretty cool. It kind of put me in mind of Twilight Imperium, but it doesn't take like 8 hours to play. So it's sort of like Twilight Imperium Light. But it's a pretty cool game. So be checking out our website on our review page, and we'll be posting that soon. And speaking of Kickstarter, this is about the time that a lot of the games that I backed last year is starting to get shipped and delivered. In fact, just today, before sitting down to record this segment of the podcast, the UPS guy dropped off a little care package. And it's funny, it's as I'm working at my computer here in my apartment, I have my computer set up so when I'm working on it, I'm able to look out the window, and it's like every time I see a UPS truck or a FedEx truck pass by, I'm like, squirrel, FedEx, UPS. So it's like I just perk up. I was like, is that for me? Is that for me? Is it gonna stop? Is it gonna stop? It's one of those things that it's like as soon as you order something or the first time you get the email that it was being a tracking number has been generated for it. You spend the next week or week and a half, however long it takes you to get the package, just constantly checking the status of the tracking number and where it's at. So it's funny. But today I got at least the first wave. It's a 2-wave shipping for Simon's Zombicide Green Horde. So I got the core box today, and then the expansions will be coming out in the second wave shipping. Yeah, another game that I backed on Kickstarter last year that should be arriving very soon is City of Kings. In fact, that's one of the interviews that I have scheduled this coming week to record with Frank West. So, in fact, I should be according to the tracking number, I should be receiving the game the day before we record that interview. So, be looking for that in the upcoming episode. Another tracking number that I'm keeping an eye on right now is not so much a game, but a game accessory. I got the Elder Dice cases coming very shortly. Actually, I think it should arrive about the same time that's City of Kings comes, because actually it's funny that both of those things, Fun Again Games, are handling the shipping for the United States. Well, the past week we played our third game of Charterstone. So the based on again, I'll put a full-fledged review after we've gone through all 12 games on our website. But thus far, just getting through the first 3 games, it's good. It's okay. I don't mind like the legacy aspect of taking the stickers off and naming your personas and characters and your charters, and to me that's kind of fun. I could get into that. What I cannot get into is just the piecemeal spoon feeding of the rules, because we would come across something, or we'll see an icon on the board, and it's like, well, okay, what the hell does that mean? We look on the back of the Charterstone Chronicle at the icons and say, okay, well, this means, whatever, minion, income, whatever. And like, well, we haven't done anything with income yet. And then you just start questioning yourself, start overanalyzing things, as OCD people tend to do. But it's like, okay, did we miss something? Was there a rule or something that we overlooked? And then you spend half an hour fludging through the rule book or online or Big GG trying to look stuff up, thinking that you missed something or got something wrong. And it's like, no, you didn't get anything wrong. It's just not. If it hasn't been introduced to you yet, then it doesn't matter because it's not in play yet. So don't worry about it. Just play the game. So that aspect of it is kind of off-putting. But, overall right now, and again, I'm going just by 3 games. We still have, 9 more games left. So, but I'm hoping things kind of open up and get more interesting. I hear rumors that it gets really interesting, maybe like by game 5 or 6 or whatever. But we'll see. So, once we get done with all 12 games, be looking for a full review from the Mega Meeple. That'll be posted on our website. You realize it's about, at the time this episode goes out, it's about maybe 6 weeks or so till the 1 year anniversary that I've been doing this.
Wow.
So, and I think the 50th episode will probably fall right on that day, because I know there were, from what I remember, at least 2 weeks that I didn't put any episodes out for one reason or another. So, so our 1 year of doing this may fall on our 50th episode. So, what do you think should we do something special for that one?
Yeah, I think we should throw a big party.
Okay, sounds good. Any reason to do a party and game? That would be a good reason. Yeah, but I even think back from when I first started this. One of the comments I made in one of the earlier episodes, like the first episode or so, or even episode 0, where I just did like a 7-minute introduction. It's like I hear these people. If it's on a podcast, it's like at some point they say, "Well, we've never thought when we started this, so we never thought that we'd get to episode whatever." Or if it's a YouTuber, it's like, "Oh, when I started this, I never thought I'd get to umpteen whatever amount of subscribers or views." And it's like I think I phrased it in such a way as like, I have every intention to make the episode whatever number. Not to say that that's the end goal, but
it's a milestone.
Yeah,
It's something you're proud of.
Yeah.
Of course, we better make it then. So let's make sure we get through.
Yeah. So we're I'm approaching a time now that a lot of the Kickstarters that I backed last year should be arriving at some time. I know we're hopefully getting our gaming table sometime in mid to late March. So got the update for that, and the neat thing with that is that it's going to be in like 2 shipments. The shipments coming in March is the table itself, the legs, and the play mat, and then all the like the cup holders and the decorations and the boards that you put on top of the table to make it into a dining room table. Evidently, those are coming in on a separate shipment. But looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's kind of exciting. I'm a little jealous there, my friend.
So the topic for this episode is I'm going to tie in with a recent Kickstarter that Simon had. Really success. I mean, I'm not sure how much over their goal that they reached, but they reached their goal for this game and ad nauseum. But it's the game from Simon called Hate, and based on the Kickstarter campaign page, it says it's based on the Chronicles of Hate graphic novel by acclaimed artist Adrian Smith, and I think maybe Adrian Smith had a hand on the artwork on the actual game, but this is a game that Simon put out, or is going to put out from Kickstarter. It has a mature 18+ rating, and the art of the game depicts acts of extreme violence as well as nudity. To survive and thrive in this barren wasteland, you need to embrace the savagery of not only massacring your enemies, but taking innocents captive, torturing them, and even feasting off their flesh.
Isn't that lovely?
So that's a good family game.
Fun night out for the family.
But let's talk about that. Violence and nudity in board games. Now I know in particularly a lot of RPGs and fantasy stuff, where the men warriors are all clad in their armor and all this stuff, and the women warriors are dressed like Princess Leia.
Yeah. There's no message there at all.
Sex and violence and sex. Sexy violence and violent sex. That's what sells. So.
Yeah, Hollywood would have something to say about that. I suspect they're going to say that most of their profit comes that way.
Yeah, but the game Hate actually has a mature rating, which now is something that this is a first for me.
I think Conan also had that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not so sure about Kingdom Death Monster, but if it didn't, it should have.
Alrighty. Yeah. So are we coming into a phase now where board games are going to be rated like movies?
The question you've got there is it's not going to solve a problem, right? From the movies aspect, I think that served the movie industry more than it served the public. A lot of these guys are making movies to make sure they get an R rating.
Yeah.
Of course, that didn't used to be the case back in the day, but these days people are expecting to be able to see this or see that, and I think they're trying to avoid lawsuits, and that's something maybe also that the board game industries in the end got in their mind, if that's the way they decide to go. Comic books the same way. They had the Comics Code back in the 50s, again acceding back to congressional intent for at least some level of censoring back in the day. So, I suppose that's a whole another separate question that you could roll out about putting ratings onto games. As to the violence, there always has been a certain amount of violence into gaming. I mean, war games, which was kind of the basis of board games that has come forth today, was all about war, right? It's all about one set of armies killing another set of armies, but just on cardboard, so nobody gets hurt.
Right.
But still, the basis is you're not going to win unless you destroy the other army. There's always been violence as part of that competition. I find that some of the board games that today have moved away to a certain extent from that violence aspect and try to use different kind of basis for conflict. So you've got Euro games that are about building automobiles. The conflict is, who's doing it better, right? But there's still plenty of games that are, like Clank. Clank's a wonderful game, but it is you killing the monster, right? Or taking his stuff, or both. Right. Or he's going to kill you. And that's a lighthearted family game, and still it's about killing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you really can't get away from, I remember taking a writing class in school, and they were saying, it seems like the whole reason stories exist is because you have two opposing characters or forces, or you have some kind of conflict.
Yeah, there's hardly any drama without conflict, right?
Yeah. And I guess depending on how far you take there, or how depending on what form that conflict takes, or how overt violent it is, that's where you get into the different levels of violence, depiction, or even glorification of violence.
Yeah, there are certain topics which are by their nature going to be violent. I mean, the horror theme, the fury of Dracula and Mansions of Madness. That's our obligatory mention of Mansions of Madness each episode. You are going after the monster, and the monster's going after you. There is violence that is going to be part of that process. And like you say, I don't want to say lazy writing, but certainly if you're trying to build conflict and drama, the simplest way to create that is, will you survive? And people, again, this can make me sound like I'm trying to say that people are lazy when they're writing. That's not necessarily the case. It's certainly going to be the most dramatic and well understood, whether you survive or not, that brings down a story to its core. So I can see why that's going to be the case, that there's going to be violence involved in many styles of gaming. Now, that being said, some games revel in it.
So, getting back to hate, evidently that one is really because I watched a playthrough of it with Eric Lang on YouTube, and I guess one of the mechanisms is in battle, if you wound someone or render them powerless, you basically take that character prisoner and take them back to your base, and your base, two of the things at your base is either a site for a torture thing or a cooking pit. So whether you decide to torture your prisoner or cook them and eat them gives you certain elements, or resources or something from the game.
So I guess the moral of that story is don't get wounded.
Yeah.
Die on the battlefield.
At what point is violence too much?
Well, let me take the case of Blood Rage. Okay, Blood Rage has a bit of a system to it where the more of your guys that die, you have a better chance of winning to a certain extent. In other words, you're gaining victory points through certain sets of systems for having your warriors die. Now, I understand that's part of the Viking point of view, that the dying in battle is a glorious thing, and I think that they handled that aspect of the game with a certain amount of abstraction, so that you're not reveling in torture and the effects of being eaten either alive or not. They kind of abstract to a certain extent where you understand that your warriors have died, but they don't make you bloodthirsty for that process.
Right.
I think that Lang and the developers of that game took what could have been reveling in the violence and decided to back that down a little bit to make it so it's a little bit more friendly fun versus bloodthirsty.
Right. Yeah, things like Zombicide or Dead of Winter, where it's like, okay, or even the others where there's violence, but you're not killing other humans. You're killing some monster or demon or beast or zombie or something.
An abstraction that you feel is something else than yourself.
Right.
Of course, you could say Dead of Winter, just like kind of like The Walking Dead, is less about the zombies and more about how people turn on each other.
Yeah.
But I think that's an interesting moral or process to kind of bring up to discuss about how humans can be violent to each other without actually tearing each other up. You know, and the two I'm most concern me. I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Tom mentioned about hate, which kind of brought up the podcast. The two that I think, one is a good game, and the other one is an interesting game, but maybe too much on the bloodthirsty side. Conan to me is a decent game. It is a game about, as it turns out, another comic book style hero, and it's the barbarian days. You know, the age of Hyboria, as they called it, and you know, you got swords and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. Kind of the fantasy element brought to life.
Yeah.
And almost you could say that whether it was the chicken or the egg, whether the fantasy gaming came to light because of Conan or vice versa, or they kind of maybe got birthed together. But there's a certain level of abstraction where the distance of time kind of hopefully draws away a little bit of the sex and violence of what's all about. And you know, the miniatures are all about that. They're like you mentioned in regards to hate. There's dismemberment, there's nudity, there's you know all those things that could be. You probably don't want your 9-year-old to see some of these miniatures. And Kingdom Death Monster, kind of more of the same. And again, I'm trying to abstract that from, you know, kind of being like the just up from cavemen is kind of the aspect of what that's supposed to be all about, or at least kind of an abstraction of that. But again, it's not stuff you'd like a child to take any kind of learning from.
Right. How about the minis? I mean, like the minis in the others. Yeah, I wouldn't want my kids to play it because I think the minis would just give them nightmares.
Yeah.
But in that game, it's like, okay, the violence is against fantastical or obscure entities, like these demons and monsters. Yeah, and good point about Blood Rage and how it does the just obscure death and another thing I think that's how I think Rising Sun has been so often compared to Blood Rage, because it takes that same code of the samurais, Japanese warriors, and the Ronin.
It's a good day to die.
Yes. So.
Yeah, I, to me, in some of these cases, I think it's the physicality of the deprivation, and that might be overstating it. Like I said, Blood Rage doesn't make the miniatures such that they are being chopped in half and having an axe to their head. So some of these other ones go that extra mile.
Yeah. Who says that they have to have a really elaborate mini? I mean, there's how many things you can do with just a little meeple, little meeple-shaped piece of wood.
Each individual enjoys their kind of gaming in the way they are, and I'm not going to criticize anybody who enjoys that style of game. It isn't necessarily going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I think there's plenty of gaming out there that has plenty of violence that doesn't have to necessarily drip in blood in order to do it.
Yeah.
And so, even though these things, the ones like we discussed, Hate in particular, are based off of other media, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to kind of roll in that on a regular basis. There's plenty of ways to bring the drama of survival and conflict in a manner that doesn't mean we have to kind of roll in the dirt and chop someone's head off to get it done.
Right. If a game is a theme or depicts something that is unsavory to you, then don't play it.
Don't buy it. Yeah.
Don't buy it. Don't support it. And that goes back, to TV. If you don't like some of the stuff that's being done on TV, how many hundreds of other channels does cable have? At some point during the day, in the 500 plus channels that you have access to, we could find something else that's more palatable.
What was that Springsteen wrote back a few years ago? 57 channels and nothing's on. I'm not necessarily a proponent of the open market as being a resolution for all of society's ills, but on the other hand, people are either going to buy or not buy, and that'll kind of solve the answer in the end.
Right. Alrighty. So, what do you guys think out there? Let us know. That this will be our question of the week. Have board games gotten too violent? Sound off on any of our media, on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and let us know what you think. All right, welcome back to the Mega Meeple. We have another successful Kickstarter to talk to you about, and our guest this episode is Todd Sanders. He is the designer of Pulp Detective. How you doing, Todd?
Great. Thank you for having me on the show.
No problem. Thank you so much for being available. I noticed you're located at the old hometown where I grew up and was raised, good old Pittsburgh, PA. So
yes, I lived here all my life. Went to Carnegie Mellon for architecture, and I like the city. So here's where I make my living.
Oh, yep. Sweet. Okay, that's we must be brothers or something, because I went to Triangle Tech and got an associates in architecture and computer-aided drafting. Never used it, but I wound up going to the civil engineering at the time, but and then. Found my way into other things later in life, as most people do, we've changed our careers like 2 times over at least. So, but yeah, so it's you a big Steelers fan?
No, I don't follow any sports at all.
No, neither do I. I used to be a Steelers fan back when the old glory days of Lynn Swann and
Yep.
Bradshaw and so forth. But
These days in Pittsburgh, it's all about artwork and food. We are an amazing art and literary scene and food scene. So
yeah,
I'm big fans of all those things.
yeah. And it's a beautiful city. It's been over a decade since I've been up there to visit family and friends. But yeah, once they did away with all the steel mills and stuff, I mean that city got a lot cleaner and a lot more beautiful. Last time I was up there, it was very very nice. So, but Pulp Detective. First of all, congratulations on a successful Kickstarter.
Thank you. It's exceeded our wildest expectations
by about $70,000 at the time.
Indeed, and still we have 1 week to go. Well, by the time this airs, we'll have a few more days to go. But Kick Track has us poised at 100,000, so we'll see if we can agree with the pundits on that one.
Okay, very good. Well, fingers crossed. But yeah, I mean, one way or another, this thing's going to see the light of day. So congratulations on that. But yeah, this Kickstarter, this episode will be going live around. Let me check the calendar again. Yeah, we usually drop in the weekend, so this will be on February 25th. And so if people are listening to this podcast hot off the press, you have about 2 or 3 days to get to the Kickstarter and back this puppy. But tell us about yourself and how you got into gaming, or how long you've been doing gaming.
I have been as a child, I was a very poor sportsman, and my family gave up on playing board games with me. But in my adult years, I sort of had a bit of a renaissance. We have 2 really great game stores here in the city, Games Unlimited and Phantom of the Attic. And I'm friends with both the owners. And I started buying games, being interested in those. And then I found Board Game Geek and joined what we call the print and play community, which due to my day job as being a graphic designer, suited me quite well. The print and play community, we design new board games, and we offer them for free on the site that you can craft up yourself or through Printer Studio or some of the other card printing places. And I got really hooked in doing that. One of the things that the P&P community offers are various contests. And Pulp Detective actually started in the 18-card contest, where you had to use just 18 cards and nothing else. So no dice, no markers, no counters, no punch boards, none of that. So I began this game about 2.5, 3 years ago now as an entry in that contest, and 18 cards was just too few for the game, so I put it on pause for a while and toyed around with it and turned it into a 36-card game, and then it kind of grew from there, and now it is 60 cards plus tokens and 6 custom dice and a couple of expansions, and
wow,
it's really come a long way. I love doing these print play contests because they really kind of force you to come up with new solutions to things. So if you only have 18 cards, how do you put the dice on the cards? How do you use the card as a counter? How do you mark things? And those kind of restrictions often lead to better creative solutions for stuff.
Okay.
So the game started as one of those, and then, as I said, about 3 years now, and Alban Viard of Alban Viard Game Studios, who's the publisher, I actually do the artwork for his Age of Steam maps. He's really well known in the Age of Steam community. We're doing some intricate maps, and he started his own game company in order to publish those, and then decided that he wanted to publish other people's work as well as his own games. And I am the flagship first game of his new line of games. That are going to be probably in the 20 to 30 minute range, usually 1 to 4 players, and subjects that he's not as interested in as a designer. His games really are quite intricate, involving building cities and the alignment of power stations and having your citizens come and building, roadways and train tracks and things. So he's kind of opened up his knowledge and foresight to the publishing end of things to me and eventually some other designers as well.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty neat. I mean, it's incredible that a game that started out with only like 18 cards, and then it kind of gets a life of its own, just kind of
Hmm.
grows and grows and grows. But tell us about Pulp Detective. It's I mean this is my what I commonly call is the barroom napkin question, because a lot of good ideas usually originate on just scribbles on a barroom napkin.
Sure.
So tell us about how you came up with the idea of Pulp Detective.
Well, I am known in the print and play community mostly as a solo game designer, and Pulp Detective has its genesis in that, although we have worked out a rather neat couple of two-player variants for the game. I really love pulp artwork, especially science fiction artwork, but detective artwork too, all the covers of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s pulps.
Yeah.
And I wanted, originally this game was sort of an express version of Elder Sign, where you have a series of goals that you need to come up with various dice lines for, saving particular dice icons and sort of defeating the big bad monster at the end of it. And I translated that into the 18 card game, but we've since expanded that. There actually are now 7 cases if you get the cases that are in the expansion. In Pulp Detective, you choose one of the cases. You are a detective. You can either play one of 2 men or one of 2 women in the base game, and there's an additional number of men and women detectives in the expansion, as well as police inspectors that you can play, each with their own ability. And you basically are solving a case. The cases can be some kidnapping or blackmail or murder or a criminal escaping from jail. You have a set number of hours to solve that case in, and the hours are divided both in nighttime hours and daytime hours, which have bearing on some actions. You're going to be choosing from one of 3 types of cards in the Investigate deck as you progress. Those cards can help you with your stamina, which gains you more dice to roll, or items, which gain you ability to manipulate those dice, or clues, which is what you really need to solve a case and find the criminal. So you're going to be choosing from these cards, and then the cards on the opposite side have a series of icons and rows that work with the time. So if you have a lot of time in the game, you're going to be rolling for 3 icons. As time progresses, you're going to be rolling for 4 and then rolling for 5. So the game actually gets progressively harder the further you go into it, because time is always ticking down, and you, at the end of every turn, lose an hour. So you're going to be rolling dice, and you're going to be manipulating those dice either through re-rolls or using twist markers, which allow you to sort of do wild cards, or using your special actions or the special actions of your sidekicks, and trying to roll for that line of icons. If you can successfully do that, you can gain, as I said, items, stamina, or clues. And if you fail in that particular line of your investigation, you're going to be losing your stamina or or the time in the game. You're going to then use those cards that you've chosen to make a series of storylines, sort of like plot points in a novel. So you have a main plot line, and you have a series of subplots too. And those can get you some dice re-rolls as well.
Okay.
So you're going to go through this, and if you're lucky enough to do it, and I'm shooting for about maybe a 15% win condition in this game. If you're lucky enough to do that and find all the clues, you're going to then confront the criminal. There's one of 4 criminals in the base game, and there are 4 different criminals who are masterminds, who are even harder in the expansion edition. And again, you're going to roll for dice icons for that. And throughout, there's a lot of flavor text and pulp artwork. We were working with Steger Properties, which is a licensing company that owns the rights to most of the pulps from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So all the artwork in the game is from actual pulp novels, and we have over 60 images altogether that the cards don't really repeat images, so you're getting really a wide panoply of pulp artwork.
Wow. So these are not like recreations of
No, these are all actual original 30s, 40s, and 50s pulps from Black Mask magazine and FBI Detective and Amazing Detective and things like that. So it's all wonderful artwork. And the artwork was really a nice spur for the game. The 3 types of investigate cards are cliffhangers, follow a lead, and informants. And I tried to pick the artwork out to really kind of tell a story. So as you're laying out your storylines, you're reading the flavor text, and you're really seeing a story unfold in front of you. One thing to keep in mind, people have asked about, is this game is not like a detective novel or mystery novel or even like an escape room game, that it's not a one and done, that the cases are, while the cases have flavor text, they are generic in the fact they have just a time track on them. That time track can mess with the game a bit in terms of the rules, but you can, there's a lot of replayability here. You're not going to be solving the case and that's it. You're done with that case and you're done with the game. So there's a lot of that. And we've actually, in fact, created a campaign mode because a lot of our backers on Kickstarter had asked for that. So you can actually play all 7 cases in order, and your detective maintains his or her stamina or items or twist markers from game to game. So it's going to be a rather interesting kind of, it's not exactly a full legacy game. You're not putting stickers on things, but it has that sort of legacy campaign mode about it as well to play. So.
Okay, that's pretty wild. Yeah, that's always been like a thing. It was like, okay, well, like you said, the exit rooms or time stories to a certain extent is like, okay, well, once you play it, that's it. You got
Yes.
got a nice box on your shelf. That's it. But
right, right. And between 7 cases, 8 possible criminals, 12 possible detectives / police inspectors to play, you're going to really be playing this game a lot before you can exhaust all the various possibilities there.
Okay, so is it sort of like a choose your own adventure type style thing?
Well, it is in part because you are choosing which of the types of cards in the investigate deck you're going to be drawing from. So there is that aspect to it, and you do have control over it. I designed the cards so that those 3 type investigate cards have a better percentage chance of getting you items, stamina, or clues.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use some detective instincts narratively here, deciding your fate.
Okay.
And then as you're placing cards to make your plots and subplots, you're doing that as well to create situations for rerolls and actions in the game. So it's not exactly a choose your own adventure in the fact that there's a predetermined solution, but you do have a lot of choice in what you're doing.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, there are 2 two-player variants. One is that you're cooperating with the police detective, so you're both playing a cooperative game, trying to solve a case together, and the other you're playing a competitive game where you're each trying to solve a case before the other player solves it. So that adds another nice little twist to things.
Yeah, that's one thing I thought was pretty interesting. Is like a lot of games are like, okay, there's like 2 to 6 or 2 to 5, and then there's a separate module for solo play. Or they'll just slap a solo variant on it. But this is actually where it seems like it started out as a solo play, and then you derived the 2-player mechanism after that, right?
Yes, and that's one of the great things about working with a publisher, somebody like Alban, who's also a game designer, is he was the one that was really adamant about the 2-player version, and we tossed around some various ideas and solutions, and he came up with some ideas. And we really worked nicely. So it's not, so as most games, yes, are 2 to 4 players with a tacked on solo game. We are a solo game who has a well-developed couple of 2-player variants for it. So
okay, cool. And it's neat that you have one of the things that I saw, I watched the sort of like setup and playthrough video you have on the Kickstarter page. And one of the many things that stood out to me is, you have in game time, you have like 24 hours to find the criminal. And I when I read that, I was like, okay, this would be cool to play this and act like it's like an episode of 24, where Keith Sutherland had 24 hours to save the world. And it was all
because the time is always ticking. That's the only resource that you are constantly running out of. At the end of every one of your turns, the hour ticks down another hour on the time track.
Yeah.
So you do not have a lot of time to solve the case. The sidekicks can help you a little bit. Actually, there's a sidekick die that's going to be in the expansion box that can allow you to possibly roll for a couple extra hours because, of course, with your sidekick, you could be in 2 places at once. But yeah, the clock is always ticking in this game, and the pressure is on.
Yeah, and let's you mentioned the expansion is called Double Cross, Masterminds, and Sidekicks.
Yes, Sidekicks, Double Cross, Masterminds. Yes, the Sidekicks add some extra characters and an extra die. Double Cross are event cards that affect you negatively for the most part, and depending on which level of the game you're playing, because you can play a basic level, a normal level, and an advanced level as well. Those have those event cards in, and then the masterminds are the 4 new mastermind criminals, which are even harder to defeat. So,
And I think it's good too that because anytime you introduce dice into a game, right away people say right off the bat, it's based on luck.
yes,
You know, it's like,
which
okay.
is mitigated in this game because the 4 investigate dice, which are the yellow dice in the game, while they have all the various icons, the 4 types of icons that you need to roll for, each die is different. So one die may have 2 connect the dots and 2 word on the street icons, and another die may have 2 connect the dots and 2 persuasion icons. So the order in which you roll the dice can be very important, and especially if your stamina is low enough that you're not rolling all of these dice, you really need to choose which die to roll when. And then on top of that, there's a Paperboy and a Underworld Connection die, as well as the Psychic die, and those all have a mix of icons on them as well. So it's not in the sense of Yahtzee that you're rolling the dice and re-rolling a few times and it's done. There's really, you need to pay attention to which dice you're rolling and when, and that will help you with the probability of going after the icons you need. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's good to see too that there's multiple language versions of this game.
yes, officially we're French, and there's been a parallel Italian Kickstarter campaign with Giotchix, which has gone well, and Alban is in discussion with a few other publishers in Europe. So hopefully by the end of this, we will see a multi-language set of options for backers. But officially right now, French and Italian.
Okay, great. And you mentioned like a 15% win chance. Yeah, that's
Yeah, you should like to shoot for a 15-20% win
Yeah,
rate for solo
that-
games.
that's about 18% more than Elder Sign, I think, or any Cthulhu.
Yes. Well, it's probably in Robinson Crusoe territory in terms of the win. There's a lot you have to do strategy-wise in order to win at the game.
Yeah.
And then some of the cases. Well, there's one case that's only 18 hours, and so you're not even have a full 24.
Oh, okay.
And we actually have one long case that's 30 hours long, but there's some other special things that mess with you there. So if you play the campaign mode, you're really going to get the sense of that time frame, the differences between one case and another.
It looks like a really cool game. Very thematic with the artwork. I mean, you really submerge yourself into just feel like you're back in the 1930s. So if everything goes well with the logistics and stuff, we're looking at estimated delivery December this year.
Yes, the games most likely will have. December. Alban has done 4 campaigns before, and I've been involved with a lot of games as a designer through Ludi Creations, and we're quite confident of that December date.
Okay.
We are professionals, and we also, we didn't promise 12,000 different stretch goals. We were very modest in that. They really just kind of added extra cases in the campaign mode, so it's not a case where there's all these miniatures and add-ons and this and that slow down the production time and cause all sorts of problems and shipping delays. So
yeah, right. And I know as a recovering Kickstarter backer, it's more challenging to budget when they do that. It's like, okay, pledge this amount, and then when the pledge manager goes live, now there's all of a sudden there's like another $150 more stuff.
Yes.
I got to get everything.
Yeah, and that also keeps Alban's costs down in terms of the shipping for this game is rather low from Europe, and that's because the game, we're not adding in all these extra things. We're keeping the weight down as much as we can by not adding in all these, stretch goals, pie in the sky stretch goals. So
excellent. Well, Todd, thank you so much. But
sure.
Yeah, if you have a few more minutes, we like to play a game with all of our guests called the, for lack of a better word or term or name, Mega Meeple Rapid Fire Round.
Okay.
And there's no clock. You don't have 24 hours to do it.
All right, let me stretch a bit here and get ready. Okay, all right, I'm ready.
So basically, it has nothing to do with gaming, but just either or. I'll say 2 things and just lets our listeners know who our guests are personality-wise. But all right, ready? Books or movies?
Books.
All right. Pepsi or Coke?
Well, I actually don't drink either, but I would guess I'd say Coke.
All right. Checkers or chess?
Chess.
All right. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
All right. Marvel or DC?
I used to be Marvel, now strictly DC.
Okay. All right, Todd. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, a reminder that this you have until about Wednesday or of this week to get to the Kickstarter. So if you haven't backed it yet or haven't seen it yet, definitely go to the Kickstarter and check that out. And speaking of such, Todd, if people want to find out more about the Kickstarter or you as a designer, where could they go?
On Kickstarter, just search for Pulp Detective. We are now one of their projects. We love projects, so we'll be in that sort of index. I'm quite active on Board Game Geek. You can find me there under the username Doomarest123. And I have a huge design forum thread over there, which is fairly easy to find. I'm usually in the top 20 posts over in the forum threads. And beyond that, I am on Twitter as Lack River, Lackriver, where I post upcoming notifications about my games and artwork that I'm working on and my books. I have a small book publishing company, Air Nothingness Press, anpress.com. And I do books of French surrealist poetry and translation and science fiction and fantasy. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
a lot of different avenues.
So do you have any projects going on right now that you're able to talk about and tell us about?
Yes, I have 2 books going to the printer on March 1st. The first is a book of speculative fiction by a local author, Jamie Lackey. It's a series of short stories that is a companion volume to a fantasy book I did of hers last year. And the new one that will be called A Metal Box Floating Among the Stars. And I'm also publishing a book called Turning Point, which will be by Steph Swainston, who is a British fantasy author, a wonderful author who I have a long-standing relationship with for book publishing. And that will be a collection of 4 stories, never before in English, 2 of which never been seen in publication form ever.
Oh, wow.
And those will be coming out, both those pre-orders in March and April for those. So aanpress.com if you're interested in good, interesting fantasy and science fiction. I also publish Jonathan Howard, who's well known for his Johannes Cabal Necromancer series, as well as Carter and Lovecraft, which is his sort of hard-boiled modern take on Lovecraft mythos.
Okay, cool.
So that actually kind of ties in Pulp Detective too. So,
alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Todd. And again, congratulations on a wildly successful Kickstarter.
Thank you,
And
appreciate it.
looking forward to getting the game and playing it.
Thanks you very much. Have a good night.
You too now. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Mega Meeple. Stay tuned next week when our guests will be Alex Mackey and Mike Shaliko with Lethal Chicken Games talking about their Kickstarter, What the Film. Also next weekend, we'll be releasing a second episode. This one will be with Uwe and Gunther Eichert from Academy Games, and they will be talking about their Kickstarter game, Agents of Mayhem, Pride of Babylon. Now, that episode is going to be pretty much that whole interview, because we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, from history to video games to board games to military. I mean, you name it. Now, if you haven't already, please go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, leave us some 5-star loving and leave us some happy reviews. It will really help us out. And if you really like the episodes, you could help support us by going to our Pod Pledge page and donating like $1 or so per episode or per month. It will really help us out with the hosting cost and such. But no worries if you don't have any money to donate and support the show. You can still support the show just by liking us on all the different social media outlets. All the links to those things and Pod Pledge can be found on our social media page on their website. Again, that's www.themegameeple.com. And just share with your friends and spread the word and tell people about us. Really appreciate that. So thanks again for listening, and until next weekend, we'll see you at the gaming table.